Witcher. Starting from becoming a knight. Introduction. Traveling through the country to become the son of a small aristocrat, carrying a soul chip with analysis and storage functions, embarking on the eternal path. Chapter 1. Deep Red. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Jade Kingdom, Yara Province, Castle. Jiang Yi suddenly woke up and opened his eyes to look around. He was stunned for a moment. A wall made of stone bricks, a room paved with wooden boards, and his head hanging on his desk. Didn't I die? Jiang Yi habitually reached out to lift his glasses, when suddenly a pair of small hands appeared in his field of vision, incredibly clear. A surge of memories accompanied me like a tide. Ariel Abraham, the fourth son of a rural nobleman, held a position equivalent to that of a commoner. He was a young master outside and a little transparent at home. My mother is dead, my father is still alive, and I am only half a step away from the protagonist. However, none of these matters. He is about to turn 12 and is about to face a choice. The Abraham family is the royal family of the Emerald Kingdom, but his branch is already far apart, only having the territory of barons. Abraham has always had a tradition of providing two paths when family members reach the age of 12. One is a knight, and the other is a scholar. The former will join the army or become wandering knights as adults, while the latter will mostly become the steward of other lords. Ariel has always been introverted and has been passionate about reading since childhood. He has already chosen the path of being a butler. But Jiang Yi didn't want to pursue academic pursuits or work for others when he traveled across the country. As far as he knows, this world possesses extraordinary power. Trainee knights can easily deal with several ordinary people, while formal knights can withstand more than 10 heavy cavalry, and a great knight can charge through the army alone. Unfortunately, all of this requires decades of effort. It would be great if Deep Red could come along. Jiang Yi recited the word Deep Red and suddenly heard a long cry in his mind. Didi, the N9527 biochip is at your service. Please name the chip. After a long roar, a Chinese mechanical sound sounded. Jiang Yi was pleasantly surprised and casually said, Deep Red. A biochip is an assistive tool that everyone had in the 23rd century, implanted in the brain with two functions. Analyze and store. The former can analyze things through various senses of the human body, while the latter stores the analyzed data. With these two functions, he is bound to reach a very high position on the path of knights and scholars. But how did this chip come about? Is it really a soul? Jiang Yi suddenly remembered an experimental accident, which was to explore the relationship between the soul and the chip, and he died in this accident. Deep Red, scan yourself and digitize according to the normal values of an 18-year-old adult. The idea fell, and the data immediately surfaced in front of me. Ariel Abraham, Jiangye. Strength 0.5, Agility 0.5, Constitution 0.6. I'm a bit weak, not old enough, and haven't received professional training yet. Jiang Yi muttered a few words. Just as he was about to sort out the memories of the original owner, a female voice came from outside the room. Master Ariel, the master asked you to go to the hall. I am very familiar with the sound, it is Maggie, the maid who took care of him since childhood. Jiang Yi followed the original owner's usual tone and casually said, I understand. He stood in front of the mirror and looked at the young man in front of him. Brown short hair, brown pupils, wearing a formal dress, with a noticeable scholarly aura. Since I have inherited everything from you, from today on, I am Ariel. Ariel wanted to lift his glasses, but there was no auxiliary tool in the eye socket position. After tidying up his clothes, he opened the door and walked out of the room. Due to his illegitimate son's reasons, Ariel's room is located more off-center. After walking for a few minutes, we arrived at the hall, which is the place for family meetings and receiving VIPs. At this moment, Baron Oz sat above the hall, his burly body packed into chairs, his gaze revealing ferocity. And below stood his children, all around 12 years old. "Father," Ariel walked into the door and said respectfully. "You're a bit late, they've all chosen it. I've said the traditions of the family before, so I won't go into too much detail." "Ariel, you're following the path of a scholar, right?" Osh nodded slightly, his tone dull and unable to tell his emotions. "Father, I want to pick up the sword and protect Abraham's honor." Ariel gritted his teeth and seemed to have made a lot of determination. Upon hearing that Ariel, who had always enjoyed reading, actually wanted to become a knight, Oz's gaze flashed with a hint of surprise and he said seriously. "Ariel. Knights are not just sitting and reading, they need hard training and life and death trials, they need strong talents and extremely strong willpower." Having anticipated that his father would ask him, Ariel calmly said, "I want to have a castle of my own." With ambition, Oz praised and looked at Ariel's scholarly aura before saying, "Wondu College will recruit students in 6 months, you can come to me anytime." Asha's concern for his 7th son is limited to this. He had no expectations for Ariel and thought that in a few days, he would regret it and come find himself. After dealing with Ariel, he waved his hand and explained, "Ariel, you follow the training tomorrow. Matthew, Oliver, you are his brothers. Remember to take care of your younger brother." "Yes, father," Ariel said in unison. Watching Osh leave, Ariel decided to leave and go to the study to collect information. At this moment, Matthew, the 5th brother next to him, walked behind Ariel and said coldly. "7th brother, don't you really want Wangdu to study? Why do you think about dancing with a gun and playing with a stick?" "I want a castle of my own," Ariel repeated. "Hee hee." Matthew sneered a few times and saw Ariel walking forward. He grabbed Ariel's sleeve. "7th brother, father asked me to take care of you." "No need." Ariel wanted to push Matthew's hand away, but as soon as he reached out, it was tightly held by Matthew. "What does Wuga mean?" Ariel knew it was because of profit and pretended to be foolish. "Brother, I just think you're better suited to be a butler." Matthew's cold voice came from his ear. "Brother Wu, it's too much," said Oliver calmly as he walked slowly behind. "Lao Lu, don't pretend to be a good person. You also hope that the fewer people there are, the better." Matthew knew what kind of people his brothers were and despised Oliver's hypocrisy. "I just think 7 brother will get out of the training ground in a few days. You know, the knight Anri is a person who can't hold on to nails," Oliver laughed. Matthew glanced at Oliver and remembered that Anri had kicked away many people, so he couldn't help but burst into laughter. After laughing for a while, he patted Ariel's shoulder and said, "I hope you can persist for a few more days." "Thank you," Ariel gently raised his hand and politely replied. Just as he finished speaking, his gaze revealed a hint of mockery. "It seems that my brothers do not welcome me, or rather they do not want any more competitors to appear." Chapter 2. Secret Medicine. You are listening at novelfull.audio. According to the Baron's regulations, each member of the family has a resource allocation. This resource is fixed, with inheritors accounting for the majority, and others can only drink some soup. Poor and wealthy, where is this soup enough to support knights? You should know that becoming a knight requires not only effort, but also resources. There is a medication within the family that can assist knights in practicing breathing techniques. Taking 1 dose of this medication can relieve half a month of sweat from an average person. And this resource is also fixed. As long as Ariel is recognized by the Knight of Anri, he can receive a monthly portion of such medication. This is also the reason why his good brothers are hostile towards him. At this thought, Ariel just smiled faintly. The Baron's territory is located near the Emerald Forest, where the raw materials for medicine are being produced. Those who own chips only need to wander around a few times, and drugs are readily available. It's the Knight Anri. It's a bit troublesome. Ariel's brow furrowed as he remembered the message from the Knight Anri. The Knight of Anrui has had decades of friendship with the Baron, undoubtedly with his own brothers. He is usually responsible for teaching knights in the territory, equivalent to a coach. The trouble is, this person's teaching is extremely strict. If the students do not meet his requirements, the enroué knight can light up whipping with a whip, and in severe cases, he can directly get people out of the training ground. Even the baron's son can be dismissed with just one word. Ariel's concern lies in this. If it were training skills, he would have the powerful analytical ability of chips and could easily master them. But my physical fitness is too poor, and normal exercise may be difficult to complete. The road is right at your feet, take a step and see, Ariel said silently. Recalling the data previously analyzed by Deep Red, Ariel silently recited the command. Deep Red, analyze the baron's physical fitness. Osh, visually assess physical fitness, strength greater than 3, agility greater than 2, and physique greater than 3. Ariel couldn't help but take a cold breath as he looked at the value greater than 3. In the 23rd century, only transformation could have such data. He once saw videos of transforming people, where a gentle punch could break steel, and a strong blow could even smash walls. And what kind of person is a more powerful and legendary Grand Knight? Ariel clenched his hand tightly, his face slightly flushed, indicating that he was very excited at this moment. It's indeed right to follow the path of a knight. After taking a few deep breaths, Ariel shifted his gaze to his two good brothers. Where are Matthew and Oliver? Drip. Matthew, strength 0.9, agility 0.6, constitution 0.9. Oliver, strength 0.8, agility 0.7, constitution 0.9. Seeing such data, Ariel's face became heavy again. Matthew and Oliver did not receive any special training and, like themselves, were both newcomers to the training ground. And with two talented players standing up, their own shortcomings will be magnified in the eyes of the Henry Cavaliers. With this heavy heart, Ariel came to the secret room where the family stored books. There are thousands of books in the library, all of which were uploaded by ancestors. Such a large number of books stand out among the rest of the province. According to the Baron, this is the greatest wealth of the territory. Ariel came here to record information and supplement the Deep Red information database. The window was slightly open, blowing a cool breeze. Ariel sat on a chair, with layers of books stacked on the front desk. As the yellow-brown paper kept flipping over, the stack of books kept increasing. Ariel, are you searching for information? A 13 or 14-year-old girl exclaimed curiously, seemingly attracted by the sound of flipping through a book. Ariel lifted his head and a familiar face caught his eye. The girl is his third sister Emily, the legitimate daughter. She has always liked reading and has the best relationship with herself among many brothers and sisters. Ariel nodded and said, I'm looking up information about knights. Emily's expression was as expected, but she wasn't here to talk to her brother about knights. A knight is not something that can be seen from a book. This is something my father asked me to send to you. During the conversation, Emily took out a book and a bag. This book is the white deer breathing technique, along with the accompanying secret medicine. Ariel, please keep it. Ariel stood up and took a serious look at Emily's eyes, hesitating for a moment before finally putting them away. Sister, why don't you advise me? What do I advise you to do? Emily glanced at the books on the desk, not about knights, but rather the history of the kingdom. She turned her head to Ariel and thought to herself that her younger brother still couldn't make up his mind. The Jade Noble College will enroll students 6 months later, and Ariel's title acquisition will not only rely on military force. Ariel listened quietly, expressionless, seemingly indifferent. This posture made Emily angry, and her younger brother's hesitant attitude, unwilling to let go on either side, made her very anxious. Night breathing requires talent, Ariel. Your talent is not here, wisdom is. I know that battle also requires wisdom. You. Emily saw Ariel's lack of salt and oil and walked away in a huff. After the person left, Ariel picked up the book and smiled helplessly. After all, according to the original owner's temper, he would never catch up. The white deer breathing technique is a powerful breathing technique obtained by Abraham's ancestors by observing white deer. Through regular breathing rhythms and matching training methods, one can build a strong physique and even give birth to the seeds of life. The seed of life is the key to breaking through nights, usually planted by other knights, and the white deer breathing technique can autonomously generate the seed of life. Its strength can be seen at www.zhaozuiyuan.com. As for the matching secret medicine, Ariel held it with complicated eyes. The family's resources are limited, and I am just an illegitimate son. The Baron would never give me a big bag of secret medicine. Ariel probably gave it to Emily, but she was afraid of refusing and deliberately said it was from her father. Recalling Emily's angry and adorable appearance, Ariel's heart warmed. After recording the information, he put the book back in its original position, put away his things, and left. At this moment, the sky is approaching dusk, and the sunset is dyeing the clouds golden. In the room, Ariel looked at the bubbling black water in the bathtub and remembered the hint given by Deep Red. White deer breathing method is a secret medicine. The usage method is to cover the secret medicine with hot water, wait for the medicine to spread to the water, then wash the whole body, and combine with breathing method. It is expected to increase physical fitness by 0.1 after the medicine bath. Reminder. After 100 medicinal baths, you will gain 2 points of physical fitness, 1 point of strength, and agility. Ariel pinched his nose and lay down inside. At first, there was no sensation. After lying down for a minute, there was a tingling pain all over my body, as if ants were crawling all over my body. It's very itchy and painful. Detected pain approaching severe pain, is pain sensation blocked? No need, Ariel gritted his teeth. Although he has been afraid of pain since childhood in his past and present lives, transcendence comes at a cost. If the pain that benefits him is unbearable, how could he become a strong person? At this moment, Ariel gritted his teeth and endured the pain of ants devouring his heart. Like a reward bestowed by heaven, after the intense pain, slowly a refreshing sensation began to emerge from all over the body. This taste is like lying in cold water in the scorching summer heat, cool and comfortable. Chapter 3. Assessment 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ariel hung his head down in the bathtub, silently reciting instructions in his heart. Deep Red, test my current physical fitness. Ariel, strength 0.5, agility 0.5, physique 0.7. As expected, Ariel's physique increased slightly, and he smiled. If he were to take another 100 medicinal baths like this, his data would reach a terrifying height. Can the analysis of the ingredients in the dark red and white deer secret medicine be completed? DD. According to the analysis of the database information, the formula of the white deer secret medicine is Aixikeo, Yinua. All formulations are recorded in the Jade Forest. Ariel's mouth curved with satisfaction. Hard training looks too weak in the face of drug use. He remembers that Matthew's 2 older brothers started exercising at the age of 7, and it took them 5 or 6 years of exercise before their data was slightly higher than himself. And myself, no need for hard training, no need for family resources, just constantly going to the Jade Forest to collect herbs can withstand their years of hard work. What if we add 99% sweat? Ariel's smile was even stronger. The next day, in the morning. There are already many half-aged boys and girls doing basic exercises on the training ground. Most of them are chivalrous children selected from the territory, dressed in uniform gray and white clothes, in stark contrast to Matthew and others nearby. Ariel woke up early and went to the edge of the training ground after washing up, learning the most standard exercise methods and doing warm-up exercises. Matthew swung his wooden sword vigorously, noticed Ariel in the corner, walked over, looked at him, and said, "Although this action is standard, it's too slow." "Well, I think so too." Ariel held a wooden sword in his hand and continued to make a downward slash, his tone of voice appearing somewhat perfunctory. Matthew smiled in disbelief and talked about the knight Henry. Lord Onroe likes to measure the selection of reserve knights through running, and most of those who fail to meet the requirements will be kicked out of the team. But after all, you are a nobleman, and Lord Onroe will take care of you. Seeing Ariel's sword make a slashing posture, Matthew sneered, "Ariel, save some energy to avoid embarrassing Lord Henry at any time." Ariel put away his wooden sword, studied Matthew for a few seconds, and smiled, saying, "Brother Wu is really kind. He even came to tell me about this. Thank you so much." Suddenly, with a hint of sincere gratitude, Matthew was caught off guard and waved his hand, saying, "I just made a bet with Oliver that you would be kicked out on the first day, while I bet you could pass the test. After all, as long as you don't perform too poorly, Lord Onroe will symbolically keep you for a few days." Ariel sneered a few times from the bottom of his heart, but his face remained unchanged and he said with a smile, "Brother, I'll grit my teeth and stick to it. Can the fifth brother of the gambling bet share with me?" Matthew paused for a moment, just as he was about to say a few words to Ariel. The knight of Henry arrived. Cough. A deliberate cough came from afar, accompanied by a calm voice. "Stop it all. Come over to my side." Before the words could be spoken, the children on the training ground stopped and quickly approached the knight Henry. No one spoke, and the training ground was suddenly reduced to the sound of footsteps. "Next, we will add some new members to the team," Onroe said in a low voice as Ariel and his companions walked over. "Matthew, Oliver, you two go into the team." Speaking of which, Onroe pointed to the children next to the team and said, "Ariel, come with them to the side for the assessment." Matthew had been training with Henry a few days ago, and he knew his level clearly, so he didn't have to go through selection. He looked at Ariel with a proud smile. But Ariel ignored himself and even ignored him, running straight towards the team on the left side. "Scan the data of the Henry Knight in deep red." Ariel silently recited the command. Onroe, strength greater than 2.5, agility greater than 2, and physique greater than 2.8. Test the average data of assessors. Drop. Average strength is 0.65, agility is 0.62, and physique is 0.67. If it weren't for taking medication, Ariel's value wouldn't even reach the average. Ariel secretly said that these people are truly children selected from the territory, and they all have talent to be around. The assessment team was arranged neatly, and Onroe said in a deep voice, 5 minutes, 2 rounds around here are qualified. I must run within the white line. If I find someone cheating, It's not just about getting out of the castle. Yes, everyone shouted loudly. Turning his back, Ariel muttered to himself. Scan the best passing assessment plan in deep red. It is expected that you will need to run 1 kilometer, and your physique is barely able to support it, but your agility should reach at least 0.67. Ariel frowned and said, the solution. During running, adjust your breathing to match the white deer breathing method. You can start the battle mode. Ariel knows the battle mode, and once activated, the chip will operate at high intensity, providing him with correction methods and the best solution at any time. The chip is very powerful, but it cannot replace him in controlling his body, and whether he can ultimately pass the assessment depends on himself. Ariel walked to the starting point, took a deep breath, and his eyes showed seriousness. At this moment, Onroe observed Ariel's condition, and his serious gaze aroused some interest in him. Ariel, the 7th son of Oz, after receiving a period of training at the age of 7, gave up the path of riding in the book garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com due to fear of hardship and fatigue, and became passionate about reading. What is the reason why you suddenly changed after giving up for 5 years? Unfortunately, Osh had already explained. Onroe slightly raised the corner of his mouth and loudly said, assessment is starting. As soon as the words fell, more than 10 teenagers started running forward from the end of the white line. As time passed, The boys all ran at the edge of the white line, forming an arc. With his physical advantage, Ariel runs in the front position. Inhale 0.1 seconds faster, tilt your head forward, and cross your legs 0.3 seconds faster. The chip instantly reminds you. We are still 2.3 meters away from the previous position, keep moving speed and pay attention to your emotions. Accelerate, cross the opponent. The other party is attempting to exceed, causing 15% breathing deformation. Pay attention to your emotions and maintain a state of mind. Matthew and Oliver pretended to be training, but in reality, their gaze was on Ariel. Seeing Ariel run around and still maintain his position in the top 5, Oliver was surprised and said, "This guy can't really pass with his strength, can he?" Matthew's face was gloomy, and he just mocked Ariel. Unexpectedly, the other party secretly hid a hand. Playing the role of a pig and eating a tiger. Matthew sneered, "How could a person who hasn't been exercising on the training ground for 5 years possibly overtake on a bend?" "He's trying to hold on," Matthew chuckled nonchalantly, "long distance running doesn't last long. At the beginning, I ran very fast, but later my stamina ran out and my abdomen started to ache. In no time, I would reveal my true form." Oliver praised, "Indeed. It's difficult for seventh brother's physique to hold on until the end. Forceful behavior is meaningless except for making a fool of oneself." Chapter 4. Assessment 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Matthew and Oliver were too young and inexperienced to see Ariel breathing naturally and calmly at this moment. As a powerful and experienced knight, Henry can feel his breath on Ariel. The natural stability and a faint elegance of the white deer breathing technique emerged on Ariel. This is the prototype of the white deer breathing method. Enroy nodded secretly, disdainful of the gossip inside the castle. The embryonic form of breathing like Ariel requires at least a year of exercise. Enroy concluded that Ariel must be secretly practicing breathing techniques in a deserted place, such as his bedroom. This is the real reason why Ariel abandoned the path of scholars and embarked on the path of knighthood again. He has enough talent to go further on the path of knights. Enroy looked at Ariel's calm expression with complex eyes. "Osh, you misread your son. He has unparalleled talent like you, and can only reach this point through exercise in the bedroom. Should I say this is Abraham, the powerful bloodline of the wizarding family?" A distant runway. As time goes by, Ariel's speed increases instead of decreasing. Especially at the last 100 meters, everyone was sweating profusely, enduring the pain in their abdomen, gritting their teeth and running. And Ariel's speed reached its peak, leaping past the top 3 apprentices, and finally made it to the top 3. Matthew watched in shock as Ariel ran up to the Knight of Henry. He couldn't figure out why Ariel, who was usually weak in language, performed so well. Suddenly, he remembered something and smiled. "Oliver, it looks like I won. Remember to give me that cross sword." At this moment, Oliver was still in shock and it took a few seconds for him to react. He chuckled lightly and said, "I'm not someone who can't afford to lose. I'll give you a sword, but you better be careful not to look too ugly when the time comes." Matthew snorted coldly and pretended to be calm, saying, "What is the ability to run fast? Is it convenient to escape?" "Humph, there is no word cowardice in the dictionary of knights. Swordsmanship, archery, and equestrianism are the symbols of knight strength." Oliver smiled. Fifth brother had always been like this, but he looked at Ariel standing in front of the Knight Henry, his eyes revealing a sense of vigilance. A character so deeply hidden must not be underestimated. A gentle breeze blows, bringing a touch of coolness. Ariel stood in front of the Knight Henry, looking up at the other person. Seeing his expressionless face, he immediately extinguished his questioning thoughts. "Deep red, test my current state." Ariel blushed and ordered with some excitement. "Drip." Currently, adrenaline is far beyond normal, and the drug residues in the body have been completely digested. Agility and physical fitness have slightly increased. It is expected that after running for 50 days a day, agility will increase by 0.1. Attention! It is not advisable to engage in high-intensity training after vigorous exercise, as it may cause permanent damage to the body. It's too slow, and it's easy to exploit one's potential, Ariel thought silently. It takes nearly 2 months to increase agility by 0.1, while taking 100 doses of medication can achieve a 100-fold effect. How to choose is clear at a glance. Ariel was calculating in his heart that he needed to find an opportunity to leave the castle and dig for medicinal herbs in the emerald forest outside. While pondering, the apprentices on the training ground gradually returned to the front of the knight Henry, neatly arranged. Just looking at them sweating profusely and holding their chests straight shows that they have been eliminated. Ariel, best, Gray. Enroué Knight glanced lightly at Ariel and others, named them 5 times in a row, and then said, "The others, you can leave now." Lord Enroué. I finished running in 5 minutes. Someone objected. Enroué didn't even glance at the person and said coldly, "Stepping through the points is just the most basic, and I have higher requirements." "All right, you can go now." Those who had originally intended to take chances immediately extinguished their idea of refutation upon seeing this bold stance. The person who was dissatisfied had no choice but to walk towards the outside of the training ground in anger, with his mouth tightly closed and not daring to say a word. Ariel looked at the scene before him and gained a deeper understanding of the Knight of Henry. 5 minutes is the rule set by the Baron, and the training ground is under his control as the Knight of Henry. Moreover, the Knight Henry seems to have no intention of paying any attention to himself. Suddenly, Ariel felt fortunate that if it weren't for Emily delivering the secret medicine, he wouldn't have been able to meet the requirements with just deep red. After all the idle people left, Henry pointed to Ariel and said, "You lead the other 4 to the long sword stand to retrieve wooden swords, 1 for each person." "Yes," Ariel immediately exclaimed. Passing by Enroué's side, a faint sound came from his ear. "I practiced breathing well." Ariel turned his head to look at Henry, who had a smile on his face and didn't say much. The long sword stand is placed in a wooden house on the edge of the training ground, neatly arranged with training equipment inside. On the right side of the wooden house, there is a row of wooden long sword racks, with a few remaining wooden swords scattered sparsely on top. Ariel first picked a good seller for himself, and let the 4 of them take the rest themselves. This wooden sword is slightly heavy, weighing about 2 to 3 pounds each. Find the book Garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com to build a 10 shape for the guard and sword body. It is a standard cross-shaped sword. Ariel lifted the wooden sword and felt his right hand trembling slightly just as he held it up. He casually swung his wooden sword straight towards the ground, and finally stopped in mid-air, almost confiscating it. This wooden sword is specially made for training. Ariel remembered that his wooden sword weighed only half a kilogram, and it was just right for exercise. But for him with only 0.5 strength, this wooden sword is too heavy. Immediately, Ariel's gaze turned to the wooden bow hanging on the left wall. The wooden sword is ultimately a melee weapon, and is prone to injury and even death in combat. And bows and arrows are long range, capable of taking people's heads from hundreds of meters away, and can also leave gracefully. They are also a key protected party in the team. The most important thing is that the chip records a complete set of archery information, and he has exercised for a period of time when he was young. Ariel had already made a decision in his heart, but he was a bit worried about the side of the Knight Henry. "At least I am also a child of a baron, so Knight Henry must give me some face value." Ariel walked to the left and picked up a wooden bow and a quiver containing 10 arrows. "Ariel, Lord Henry asked us to wield a sword." "What are you doing with an extra bow?" a boy named George kindly reminded. "Compared to swordsmanship, I am better at using a bow," Ariel laughed. George opened his mouth to try to persuade a few words, but considering the identity of Ariel's young master, he felt that there was no need to say more. The remaining three knew the temper of the knight Henry and silently thought to themselves. The young master who made a name for himself made a fool of himself in front of Lord Henry. 5 people each returned to the training ground with their own thoughts in mind. Chapter 5. Training 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At this moment, Henry was teaching Matthew and Oliver swordsmanship when he saw the 5 of them walking on the training ground and angrily rebuked them. Come here. Hurry up. Didn't you have breakfast this morning? Under the roaring sound, Ariel and others' footsteps were noticeably faster, and the originally half-minute journey took more than 10 seconds to arrive. Matthew noticed Ariel's long bow in his hand and had a strange expression on his face. Although archery is easier to master than cross swords, an ordinary archer needs to train for at least 2 to 3 years. And he clearly remembers that the knight Henry did not ask Ariel to hold the bow. Matthew glanced at Henry and a hint of mockery appeared on his face. Ariel, what are you doing with the bow? Henry said expressionlessly. I have practiced archery for a while before and would like to give it a try again, Ariel said respectfully. Henri nodded slightly, as if he had exposed the matter, which disappointed Matthew and others. Subsequently, Henri picked up a sword from his back and casually swung out a beautiful sword flower. Swordsmanship has 5 basic movements. Forward slash, upward thrust, horizontal slash, direct thrust, and downward thrust. Henri demonstrated one by one, and the movements were smooth and seamless. The movements may seem simple, but beginners need to be standard and smooth, and it's impossible to achieve them without a few years of effort. Take a closer look, let me explain in slow motion next. Henri spoke while gripping the big sword with both hands and vigorously waving it forward. Hoo! A gust of wind swept by, and the small grass on the ground fell down like a straight line of grass. Did you see it clearly? This is a straight cut. I'll demonstrate it again, you follow along. As he spoke, Henri swung his sword again, and the strong sword energy overwhelmed the grass, causing it to collapse instantly. Ariel, come and give it a try. Okay. Ariel walked out of the column, raised his wooden sword, and swung it forward, landing it in mid-air before reluctantly retracting it. When he put away his sword, his hands trembled slightly, indicating that the wooden sword placed a heavy burden on him. Deep red, check my movements just now. 52% deformation of actions. Ariel let out a deep sigh in his heart. With only 0.5 strength, he had a heavy burden just by lifting his wooden sword. Zizi Henri shook his head secretly and suddenly heard a faint laugh. His gaze followed the sound and it was Matthew. Matthew. What are you laughing at? I just remembered something funny, Lord Henry. Matthew's smile stopped and he said with a serious tone. Can you demonstrate it once? Okay. Matthew held the wooden sword and waved it casually, with the blade passing over his predecessor. Smooth movements, looking very comfortable, with a unique sense of beauty, except for differences in strength, it is difficult for ordinary people to see the difference. Matthew took the opportunity to retract the wooden sword and glanced proudly at Ariel. Deep red, compare the movements of Matthew and Henry. Ariel silently gave the command. 3% of the movement is deformed. Ariel glanced at Matthew and met his mocking gaze. It seems that if you want to surpass them in a short period of time, you must rely on drug use and increase your strength before practicing swordsmanship. Henri had already anticipated Matthew's performance, but nodded lightly. The movements can be considered standard, but the strength is used too much at the tip of the sword, so it needs to be slightly downward. Matthew had heard the standard answer a long time ago and immediately rushed to answer. I know, Lord Henri. Focusing power on the tip of the sword can easily damage the blade and cause it to curl. Henri let out a sigh, pulled out the sword on his back again, and then demonstrated the other 4 basic movements several times. Alright, if there's anything you don't understand, you can ask Matthew and Oliver, or find other older members. After the demonstration, Enroe casually explained a few words and strode towards the other apprentices. Drip. Recording completed, please name this information. A deep red prompt sounded. Basic swordsmanship. Ariel glanced at the bustling training ground, and there was no one in his time who was as difficult as him to even lift a sword. He walked silently to a shooting range when suddenly a familiar voice came from behind. Aren't you practicing swordsmanship, Ariel? Ariel turned around and saw Matthew. He pointed to the wooden sword on the ground and smiled, saying, Did you not understand? Lord Enroe specifically instructed you to come and ask me if you did not understand anything. No need, thank you. Ariel picked up the wooden bow and tried pulling it, feeling pretty good. Watching Ariel ignore himself, Matthew felt very unhappy in his heart. He certainly didn't come here to teach Ariel, to have a deep brotherly relationship or something. He just wanted to come over and take a look at Ariel's jokes. After all, training a person who can't even lift a sword steadily makes the scene interesting. Matthew looked at Ariel holding a long bow, taking out an arrow from the barrel, and chuckled lightly. Ariel, as a brother, I kindly remind you. Archery requires strong arm strength, excellent aiming, and correct posture and skills. Matthew almost didn't write, "You can ask me for help," on his face. It's okay, just play around. Ariel held a long bow, activated the auxiliary aiming, and slowly pulled the bow to its limit with force. After a chirp, the arrow drifted in the air and formed an arc, accurately landing on the red bullseye. Matthew was stunned. Normally, Ariel's arm strength was not enough to support him shooting so far, but he succeeded. And it still hit the bullseye. Luck. It's definitely luck. Matthew thought to himself. He has never been on the training ground for 5 years and has never seen Ariel practicing archery anywhere. How could a beginner perform so well? Even a genius would have to practice for several months, right? Matthew looked at Ariel, but he didn't look over as he thought, showing his pride. Instead, he drew his long bow and shot another arrow. This arrow still hit the target, although it didn't hit the center of the target directly like last time. It achieved a score of 9 rings. If one time counts as luck, what about another time? Matthew's gaze shifted from the target to Ariel, with a look of 3 parts astonishment and 7 parts doubt. When was the last time Ariel practiced archery? 5 years ago or 6 years ago? Is there really a natural marksman in this world? Matthew doesn't believe it. He was about to ask a question, and then a cloud-piercing arrow flew over and hit the bullseye again. Matthew stared blankly at the target symbolizing a 9 ring and 2 10 rings, and remained silent for a long time. Is this what Ariel calls casual play? With this archery alone, Ariel can surpass 90% of the people on the training ground. He, Matthew, is also one of them. Brother Wu, what's wrong with you? Ariel pretended to be concerned. To be honest, Ariel, how long have you been practicing archery? Have you been secretly practicing behind our backs every day? Matthew became more reasonable as he thought, and in the end, he gritted his teeth and gritted his teeth. You deliberately behaved so badly just to numb our brothers and ease our vigilance. I didn't expect that today you finally couldn't help but stop pretending. The assessment is like this, archery is like this, and daily reading is also like this. So patient, so good a 7th brother, so good an Ariel. Chapter 6. Training, 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Listening to Matthew's words in his ear, Ariel was speechless for a moment. He just wanted the other person to step back and not disturb him, so he deliberately showed his hand. Unexpectedly, Matthew was a brain teaser. Cough. 5th brother, you misunderstood. It's just luck. I really shot casually. Matthew rolled his eyes and saw through Ariel's character. Undoubtedly, Ariel is a patient and capable guy. Don't worry, 7th brother, I will never reveal what happened today. I swear, Matthew said seriously. Explanation is concealment, concealment is storytelling. Ariel felt that it was better not to continue talking, and the more he said, the more Matthew felt that his brain-teased answer was correct. Seventh younger brother, why don't I teach you swordsmanship in the future? How about you teach me archery? Oliver, who usually doesn't show off his skills, has even been praised by his father for his swordsmanship talent. It's not as good as us. Brother Wu, you've been overthinking. I just feel good today, and I don't know what will happen in the future. Ariel didn't want to pay attention to the family's troubles, he just wanted to find a quiet place to practice archery. If Brother Wu has nothing to do, I'll leave, Ariel politely said, turning his head and leaving, regardless of whether Matthew was okay. Walking on the road, Ariel silently recited the command. Deep red, check the exercise just now. Drip. It is estimated that after 10,086 archery attempts, it can increase the strength by 0.1. More than 10,000 times. It's still okay, Ariel murmured softly. Watching Ariel's figure gradually fade away, Matthew squinted his eyes and suddenly showed a smile before turning to find Oliver. In the afternoon, Knight Henry will mostly teach archery, and he plans to make a bet with Oliver. Matthew believed that Oliver must be reluctant to part with his sword. In the afternoon. As training approached, the knight apprentices came to the training ground one after another, some training alone and some fighting. Because Ariel and others are newcomers, Henry will first teach them the basics and only carry out unified training when their foundation is solid. Enroué walked up to Ariel and others, glanced casually, and saw the 7 people standing straight. He nodded in satisfaction. Ariel, how have you been practicing swordsmanship this morning? Henry looked at Ariel. Practicing archery, Lord Enroué. After speaking, Ariel added, I don't have enough arm strength, so it's a bit difficult to lift the wooden sword for training. As soon as these words were spoken, Oliver and others chuckled faintly. The wooden sword used for training is indeed a bit heavy, but it is not difficult to lift, at least basic training can still achieve it. But even the most basic Ariel couldn't do it, and he even said this shameless thing about himself. In the morning, Enroué noticed that Ariel was unable to retract his sword, and he knew that his strength was not enough. However, Ariel's honest character aroused his favor. You can use a lighter wooden sword during training, and your strength will gradually increase. First, lay a solid foundation. Yes, Lord Henry. Ariel shouted loudly. The gathering place is located at the shooting range. Please inform Ariel and others in advance that they have already prepared the bows and arrows for practice. Enroué borrowed an apprentice's wooden bow and immediately spread his feet and shoulders, tilting his body slightly forward. This is the standard standing posture, pay attention to maintaining body balance and place the center of gravity on the forefoot. Enroué stood motionless for half a minute before taking down an arrow. Subsequently, he held the grip on the bow with his left hand, turning his body slightly to the left while tilting the bow slightly to the right. Watch it. Be sure to pay attention to the position of your body in bow, as this can increase the impact of the bow string on the target. Then, hold the thumb between the index and middle fingers, and when pulling the bow, do not exert too much force. Remember. Be sure to gradually increase the tension. Accompanied by the sound of speech, Enroué personally demonstrated the standard action of drawing a bow and archery. After a sound of breaking through the air, the arrow shot out hit the bullseye with a straight hook. This slow and leisurely movement may seem a bit casual, but for a normal person to reach this level, Ariel knows that without chip assistance, it would take at least 10 years. Does anyone want to give it a try? Henry looked at the apprentices for a moment, while Matthew and Oliver's gaze simultaneously focused on Ariel. Ariel, you've been practicing all morning. How about coming up and demonstrating to us? Oliver smiled. Yeah, 7th brother, I know you've always been good at archery. Can you demonstrate it? Matthew coaxed. As the two were nominated, everyone's gaze converged on Ariel. Those who have doubts, those who have ill intentions. In fact, Oliver only mentioned Ariel because he made a bet with Matthew this morning. The bet is that Ariel's performance is very poor, he can't even hit the target. For this gamble, Oliver believed he could definitely win back the sword. After all, he had never heard of or seen Ariel practice archery in recent years. Even Oliver vaguely felt that Matthew had a conscience and decided to find a reason to return his sword. Noticing everyone's gaze, Ariel first glanced at Henri's face and saw that the other person nodded slightly. He had no choice but to pick up the wooden bow and walk to the platform. When holding the bow, hold the grip with your left hand. Henri was just about to give some guidance when he looked for Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com and saw that Ariel had already set up a standard posture and stopped speaking in an instant. Have you practiced specifically? How many days have you practiced? Henri said in surprise. I practiced a few years ago, but I just picked it up recently, Ariel said as he took out an arrow from the quiver with his right hand. Do you still remember? Do you need any help? Henri was thinking about something a few years ago, but Ariel probably forgot and wanted to give some guidance. As soon as the words fell, Ariel had already drawn his bow and shot an arrow. With a chirp of an arrow, it flew past and reached the position of a ring. The crowd on the shooting range looked at the target in surprise and then shifted their gaze to Ariel. You do it again. Henri couldn't conceal her excitement. He remembers Ariel's archery movements were very standard, which he could only do after practicing for a whole morning. And it also hit the target character from a distance of several tens of meters. You should know that Ariel can be seen as a newcomer who knows nothing at this time. Ariel drew the arrow and bow again, silently reciting the command in his heart. Deep red, assist in shooting the second ring. Action deformation 9%. Action deformation 3%. Ariel drew his bow full and aimed at the appropriate position. An arrow was shot again, flying straight towards the target. 1 second later, an arrow hit the position of the second ring, just above the previous arrow. Henri was stunned for a moment, wiped his eyes, and there were 2 arrows, that's right. Is there really a genius in this world? Henri's eyes were a bit complicated. He practiced for several days before barely hitting the target, while Ariel only spent 1 morning. That's right, it only took 1 morning. At this moment, Matthew and Oliver had only one thought in their hearts. Are you playing me? Chapter 7. Life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. However, Matthew noticed the shock of Knight Henri and breathed a sigh of relief, then looked at Oliver with ill intentions. His gaze met perfectly, and Oliver exclaimed angrily. Did you mean it, Matthew? I knew you were not well-intentioned. Matthew said truthfully, who knew Ariel's level changed so much in just 1 morning. I didn't lie to you. Oliver was too lazy to pay attention to Matthew and turned his head away. Suddenly, he recalled Ariel's performance and felt a surge of worry in his heart. Although Ariel is not good at swordsmanship, he has unparalleled talent in archery. His threat is even higher than Matthew. With this in mind, Oliver attached a little more importance to Ariel as a competitor. The rest of the people were not sure how terrifying Ariel's talent was, but noticed that the surprise in Henri's eyes vaguely guessed something. After personally attempting to shoot arrows several times, the other apprentices suddenly realized the terror of Ariel. They drew their bows and arched arrows, but were angrily criticized by Henri for their non-standard movements, and their arrows also deviated by 108,000 miles. And Ariel, Lord Henri didn't say a word. Undoubtedly, Ariel is definitely a talented archer. Henri and others were unaware that Ariel was controlling the points, and all the loop numbers were what he wanted them to see. This was only vaguely felt by Matthew. Henri taught for a while before leaving. Before leaving, he specifically glanced at Ariel, which made Ariel feel somewhat helpless. He's already controlling the points, just hoping to show a little bit and not show off. He just didn't expect the original owner to be too unbearable in the eyes of Enrue and the others. Just a little display of himself would make him a genius. You must keep a low profile, when there's a chance to sneak out of the castle and dig billions of medicinal herbs. Thinking about it, Ariel arrived at a position on the edge. He turned around and saw no one following him, so he picked up his bow and arrow and started practicing seriously. I shot an arrow casually, just hitting the white line of the third and fourth rings. Then, he shot several arrows in a row, mostly in the third or fourth ring, with only one arrow reaching the second ring. Ariel muttered, "Deep red, test my archery skills." Didi, according to the database, your archery level is LV4 and the maximum level is LV10, which is the classification of archery by humans. Not bad. Ariel reached LV6 in his previous life, and with the assistance of a chip, he could reach LV10. He tested it this morning and with the assistance of a chip, his level is at least LV9, very close to LV10. What level is this? Simply put, shoot wherever you point, hit 100 shots. Specifically, even if a mosquito is within range, Ariel can penetrate its wings without harming its life. Ariel continued to practice for a long time with the assistance of Deep Red. After the training, he estimated that he could recover to his previous level by practicing for a few more days and a half months. In the evening, the restaurant. Ariel sat at the back of the dining table, next to Matthew and Oliver. The other positions on the dining table were gradually taken down. The Baron has 16 children and 5 wives. There is no religious constraint in this world, and it is common for nobles to have wives and concubines in groups. At this moment, the dining table was filled with more than 10 dishes, including round mushrooms, green vegetables, and grilled pink steak, all of which were delicious in color, aroma, and taste. Unfortunately, none of them were Chinese cuisine. But the knives and forks on the dining table lay quietly, even the noblewomen remained silent. Ariel sat bored in the chair, disgusted by the aristocratic etiquette and only wanted to finish breakfast and go back to bed early. And he also detests this unequal treatment based on seniority and exclusivity. At this moment, the Baron walked in, followed by the knight Henri. As the Baron took his seat, more than 10 maids stood by the chairs, serving vegetables and soup for the young masters and ladies. Enrue whispered a few words in the Baron's ear, and the Baron's gaze suddenly turned to Ariel with surprise in his eyes. Then, he glanced at Matthew and Oliver, as well as several other older children, and said with a smile. "Ariel, the bow is pulling well, but the strength is a bit weak." Upon hearing this, Ariel looked up at the Baron and saw that he had nothing to say. He withdrew his gaze and thought to himself that his father knew everything about the day. Matthew and Oliver on the dining table lowered their heads and silently cut the steak in front of them. Although it was their brothers who came to the training ground for formal training, father only praised Ariel. This incident intensified their sense of crisis and made them even more wary of Ariel, a very patient guy. Dinner was a bit oppressive, with only the sound of chewing and knives and forks colliding in the restaurant. Suddenly, a guard wearing leather armor ran quickly outside the restaurant, but was stopped by the guards guarding the door. The Baron asked calmly, "What happened?" "Master, it's young Master Chloe back." "It's Chloe back?" The Baron murmured to himself with some surprise. Chloe is his eldest son and also the heir to his territory. A few months ago, the Baron sent him to the provincial capital to do business, taking him along to buy a precious potion. "If everything goes smoothly, the things should be in my son's hands." The Baron calmed his emotions for a moment, glanced at the people on the dining table, and said calmly. "Vina, Emily, you two come with me, let the others go back first." "Yes." Ariel watched the Baron leave, recalling rumors about Chloe. Chloe is his elder brother, and at the age of only 16, he reached the brink of becoming a formal knight. Perhaps within 2 years, a genius knight will emerge from the academy. www.zhaoshuyuan.com The Baron gave him a high expectation, and also pressed Ariel's brothers and sisters to raise their heads. It's a bit like someone else's child. Ariel glanced at Matthew and Oliver, their brows furrowed, and Matthew didn't even notice he was looking at him. If it were based on his temperament, he would probably come over and make a few sarcastic remarks. A strong competitor has returned, but with deep red in it, there's no need to worry too much. Ariel mentally planned to go to the Emerald Forest during the training break. The night wind is a bit bleak, and the weather is now entering autumn and winter. After finishing his meal, Ariel first walked around the castle, backed up the terrain records, and then took a shower in the bathroom. When he returned to the bedroom, Emily seemed to have sorted things out and stood at the door yawning. "Sister, why did you come?" Ariel ran over and didn't pay attention to the water stains on his hair even though they hit his eyes. "Why, your kid doesn't welcome me." Emily couldn't help but say. "How could that be?" "Haha." Ariel smiled a few times and invited Emily into the room. Seeing Emily carrying something and putting it on the desk, Ariel knew what it was and quickly stuffed it back. "Sister, if you come, younger brother, I will be very happy." "What other gifts do you bring?" "This is a gift to congratulate you on passing the assessment." Emily was afraid that Ariel wouldn't accept it, and added, "Father said you have weak willpower, and I'm afraid you'll be bullied by Matthew and the others. I've specially sent you a family secret medicine." "Humph, thank you, sister." Chapter 8. Wizards. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Thank you, third sister." Ariel looked at the third sister pouting and insisting on giving it to him, feeling warm in his heart. He resisted a little and the thing arrived in his arms. Emily smiled as she watched her younger brother accept the things. She casually glanced at her brother's bookshelf and saw the textbooks of the Jade Noble Academy, her smile fading slightly. "Ariel, are you really not planning to study at Wangdu's place?" After learning that the knight possessed extraordinary powers, Ariel extinguished the idea of reading. Without him, a great man should wield a 3-foot-long sword, galloping across the horizon. Ariel shook his head and said, "If there's a chance, I'd rather go to the Knights Academy for further studies." Ariel looked at Emily with serious eyes. "Sister, knights are an extraordinary path. They hold powerful power and truly determine the direction of the kingdom." "Sister, I am a man. I don't want to become a butler, let alone a bard." "Sister, I want to master powerful power, I want." As he spoke, Ariel stopped and turned to look at the bright moon outside the window. "Ariel, what do you think of me as a weak student?" Emily smiled lightly. "Beautiful, gentle, lovely." Ariel wished he could say all the words praising women in the world. "Tell the truth." "Rich." Ariel whimpered out a word. "Do you know how much a sharp sword costs? Do you know how much a breathing book costs? Do you know how much it costs to hire a knight?" "Ariel." Emily stood up and counted her fingers, saying, "A sword that cuts iron like mud sells at least 10 gold coins at the auction, an excellent breathing technique starts at 100 gold coins, and hiring a knight for 1 year costs only 3 to 4 gold coins. And this is the power of money. Just like a family's secret medicine, a single ingredient is only a few silver coins." Listening to what was in his ear, Ariel inexplicably felt that it made sense, but he always has a goal in his heart. To master power and find his way home. Emily noticed that Ariel's gaze did not waver and said, "Ariel, do you know a wizard?" "Wizards." Ariel had just given instructions to Deep Red and only listened to Emily continuing. "Rumor has it that wizards use the technique of summoning the wind to achieve immortality and master all the powers in this world. They are hidden in the corners of the world, studying the laws of all things movements." Suddenly, a piece of information from Deep Red came that may have been influenced by wizards. In the year 789 of the Jade Calendar, a large-scale epidemic occurred in northern provinces, lasting only 1 month before suddenly disappearing in the year 831 of the Jade calendar. A major tsunami occurred at the port of Maluya in the kingdom, and nothing happened in the year 941 of the Jade calendar. The Jade Kingdom and the Kingdom of Moon went to war, and the Kingdom of Moon was unstoppable. On September 18, the army invaded the capital. That night, the Kingdom of Moon surrendered and signed a series of unequal treaties. Watching this series of events, Ariel suddenly realized that there was a mysterious force controlling the world. The source of this power is probably a wizard. Ariel lifted his head with a serious gaze. Did you also notice? The records in history books are based on wild materials. Emily calmly picked up a history textbook and flipped over to the year 941 of the Jade calendar. In front of powerful wizards, the so-called knights, great knights, and even the indestructible army are just jokes. The true nobility of this world, especially the royal family, all reveal the shadow of wizards behind them. Ariel suddenly realized something and quickly asked after him. Is the Abraham family a descendant of wizards? Is the Jade Noble Academy a wizarding academy? Don't ask me, your sister and I are not omnipotent. My father didn't tell me either, he just said there are more opportunities in Wangdu. Emily lay comfortably on the chair in front of the desk, while Ariel stood beside her massaging her. Sister, let's say a few more words. All that needs to be said has been said. Our bloodline is just a distant branch, how do we know the internal information? On the contrary, are you still reading? Emily closed her eyes and enjoyed her brother's thoughtful massage. Not reading. Upon hearing this, Emily's sandbag-sized fist immediately hit Ariel's head. Sister. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, I've already finished learning and passing the exam is definitely not a problem. Okay. You're still proud of your abilities, right? Ariel, who possesses the power of deep red, is truly unforgettable. As long as all the exam points are from books, he can easily answer them at a glance. But this is not easy to explain. Forget it, you go on your knight's path, I go on my wizard's path. When your sister develops, I'll give you a lift. Ariel, who possesses the power of deep red, doesn't think it's certain who will help whom. After chatting for a while, the two finally decided on Ariel's plan to train during the day and study at night. Watching Emily leave, Ariel seemed to be lost in thought, as if she had been replaced by someone else. Calling for wind and rain, studying the laws of all things movements. Sounds a bit like a magician studying science. Ariel looked out the window, full of stars and a bright moon hanging high. He recalled all the intelligence about the wizards, but there was no information pointing to their powerful sources. Forget it, let's start by becoming a knight. Knights break the limits of the human body physically and possess extraordinary power. Whether or not I have the opportunity to encounter wizards in the future, this is a good help. The Jade Noble College will enroll students in 6 months, and the time is still early. Suddenly, Ariel remembered something and turned his gaze to the bag on the desk. The bag contains a secret medicine. Zhaoshuyuan.com, perhaps I should go to the bathroom again. Ariel murmured softly. Maggie, help me get a towel. Ariel shouted outside the door. In the washroom. Ariel lay in the bathtub, black water flooding his chest, and a piercing sensation came from all over his body. This kind of stabbing pain is very familiar, Ariel has already experienced it once. After enduring it, there is a refreshing and comfortable feeling, which is as addictive as drugs. Ariel enjoys the taste of becoming stronger. Deep red, test my physical fitness. Drip. Ariel Abraham, strength 0.6, agility 0.6, physique 0.7. Both strength and agility have increased by 0.1. Ariel smiled with satisfaction. Strength and agility may be due to the accumulation in the last medicinal bath, and the improvement in physical fitness should not have reached the threshold of 0.1. Deep red, adjust the average physical fitness of the morning assessors. Ariel silently recited the instructions. Drop. Average strength is 0.65, agility is 0.62, and physique is 0.67. Besides me, what is the average physical fitness of new trainees on the training ground? Strength 0.74, agility 0.71, constitution 0.77. Ariel looked at the two sets of data in front of him, and his previous excitement immediately subsided. The journey of knights is heavy and far ahead. We still need to continue working hard. Ariel climbed out of the bathtub, washed himself with hot water, and wiped away all the water stains on his body. He turned his head to look at the black water in the bathtub and thought to himself. He with the power of deep red will eventually be able to elevate the data to a terrifying height. Chapter 9. Sword Practice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next day, in the morning, Ariel arrived at the training ground early and walked to the small room where the training equipment was placed. Originally, he only wanted to hold a bow and arrow, but suddenly he had an idea in his mind. He walked up to the long sword rack, picked up a wooden sword casually, and lifted it up. It's a bit heavy, but it's still acceptable. My arm strength has increased significantly, you can give it a try again. Ariel swung his wooden sword vigorously in the chopping position, and it stopped in mid-air and quickly stabilized. 34% deformation of actions. Dark red instant reminder. Ariel's face showed a smile, and compared to the last time he couldn't even hold his sword steadily, he had made great progress. He originally wanted to try again, but suddenly someone came in from outside the door to pick up the training equipment. Ariel put away his wooden sword and walked towards the training ground. He habitually found a corner with no one on the edge and continued his exercise just now. 27% deformation of actions. 21% deformation of actions. After several consecutive slashes, Ariel adjusted his posture according to the deep red prompts. As the wooden sword continued to swing, the deformation percentage of the deep red prompt continued to decrease. When the movement deformation is less than 5%, Ariel's sword swinging speed is either fast or slow. Not seeking speed, striving for a sufficiently standard posture. He tried to make his muscles slowly remember this feeling, laying a solid foundation before trying to increase speed. To test the training effect, it is expected to practice 31 more times, which will produce weak muscle memory. Hint. Indirect training is more conducive to the formation of muscle memory. A deep red analysis emerged before Ariel's eyes, providing appropriate reminders. Ariel swung his sword from bottom to top after 31 consecutive slashes, clearly switching to an upward thrust. As the sword continued to swing, the movements became more and more standardized. The faint sound of the wind emanated from the sword, full of rhythm. This is the horror of chips. Ariel can always improve himself with the best training route. And be able to fully digitize this process and record your progress. Not far away, Knight Henry was patrolling the training progress of the students when he suddenly saw Ariel practicing swordsmanship and his footsteps stopped. This action is too slow, but it's standard enough. It's actually a clever training method. Enroy watched as Ariel kept wielding his sword, giving an evaluation in his heart. No, the wind is decreasing. Enroy got closer and stood more than 10 meters behind Ariel. Hiss, hiss. The subtle sound of breaking through the air is difficult for ordinary people to hear clearly. But as a powerful knight, Enroy's hearing far exceeds that of an ordinary person, and he can distinguish the sound of Ariel wielding his sword on the noisy training ground. This feeling. Enroy's eyes lit up, revealing a hint of surprise. This is a level that swordsmanship can only achieve with sufficient standards, where the blade has minimal contact with the air and the sound of breaking through the air is difficult to hear clearly. In this realm, the speed of wielding the sword is very fast and also very covert. Even some formal knights find it difficult to reach this realm, but Ariel did. If we continue to increase our speed, there may not be many people on this training ground who can take on a few moves under Ariel's command. Just as Henri was pondering, Matthew walked over. Lord Henri, I would like to ask you about swordsmanship, Matthew said respectfully. No time, Henri said in a brief, horrified tone, her gaze still fixed on Ariel. Matthew had anticipated and did not react much, but when he noticed that Lord Henri was looking at Ariel, a wave of jealousy arose. When he saw Ariel swinging his sword slowly, his jealousy instantly amplified. Why would Lord Henri rather watch Ariel than spend time guiding me? Is it just his talent? But his swordsmanship is just like that. Matthew clenched his fist, his nails imprinted on the palm of his hand, tingling with pain. Ariel is just skilled in archery, how can he compare to himself in swordsmanship? Even the sword swing is not as good as mud legs. Among the newcomers, when it comes to swordsmanship, Matthew only obeys Oliver. Because the instructor is the knight of Henri, Matthew dare not attack. He suppressed his anger and left behind his back. In fact, Ariel already knew through deep red that Henri was observing him from behind. But he trains very enthusiastically, and the dopamine produced in his body makes him very happy. Without command, Ariel didn't want to stop. Until a deep red prompt came, drip. Detected that the muscle tissue in the right arm is nearing its limit, estimated recovery time is 1 hour. Ariel's sword swinging motion suddenly stopped, what if we continue training? The muscle tissue of the right arm may have suffered a slight sprain, with an estimated recovery time of 11 hours. Ariel reluctantly stopped. Scientific exercise is indeed the best route, but sometimes it can be quite unpleasant. Deep red, test the effectiveness of this training. Basic swordsmanship has initially formed muscle memory, with a slight increase in arm strength. It is expected that after another 100 hours of exercise, the strength will increase by 0.1. Deep red replied instantly. Ariel's mouth curved slightly upwards, and he liked the feeling of getting stronger. It would be great if there were medication to assist, so I would become stronger faster. Suddenly, Ariel recalled the Knight of Henri. Looking back, he saw Henri still standing in place, looking for the book garden www.zhaozuiyuan.com with a faint smile on his face. Coincidentally, he had something to ask the other party for, and Ariel greeted him loudly as he walked. Lord Henri. Do you have something to ask me for, Ariel? Henri knew from Ariel's smiling expression that he must have something to do with him. It's like this, I want to take a leave and take a look outside the castle. Ariel scratched the back of his head, looking very embarrassed. Henri looked at Ariel in detail for a while, thinking that Ariel was the son of a baron, young and inexperienced, and said. The entry and exit of the castle are approved by the baron and the butler. Ariel, you should go find them. I am only responsible for training you. Ariel was rejected, with a smile still on his face, as if he didn't pay much attention. Excuse me, Lord Henri. Take a break and continue training. By the way, the wooden sword you just used was from the training ground, right? Ariel hesitated for a moment and nodded. Fortunately, Henri did not continue to ask, only encouraged a few words. As Ariel watched Henri leave, he let out a deep sigh. Henri Knight is sure to be able to bring people in and out freely, without much thought, but he has a good impression of himself and politely refuses. As for going to find my father and butler. Ariel silently crossed out this choice. He couldn't say he wanted to go out and play, or to be honest, go to the Emerald Forest to pick herbs, could he? After careful consideration for a moment, Ariel realized that he might have to trouble Emily again, thinking that he had already troubled her twice. Ariel felt a little resistant in his heart. But the thought of being able to repay her after becoming stronger unconsciously lowered the bottom line. He just didn't expect the transition to come so quickly. Chapter 10. Hunting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Master Ariel. Maggie, the maid responsible for taking care of Ariel, hurriedly ran to the training ground, shouting while running. "What's wrong, Maggie?" Ariel picked up his wooden sword and stood up. He saw Maggie looking very anxious and speculated that it was his father or the butler who had something to ask him for. "Master Ariel, the master wants you to come to the hall." Maggie ran to Ariel, panting heavily. "Isn't there anyone else?" Ariel said calmly. "The master also contacted Master Matthew and the others. By the way, Master Chloe is also here." Ariel looked towards Matthew and Oliver, who were 100 meters away, and they indeed received the notification. Father gathered his sons together. "There's something important to say." Ariel's gaze flickered with doubt. "If there is really something important, Father will say a few days ago, it must be a last-minute notice." Hall. The young masters on the training ground arrived one after another, standing in twos and threes. At this moment, Ariel also walked in and calmly swept around the hall, only to find that Knight Henry was also present and standing behind him. Not only that, knights stationed in various places also arrived, standing slightly behind the Knights of Henry. Ariel looked up at the Baron sitting above, his eyes closed and he was resting, with his elder brother Chloe standing next to him. This position arrangement is unusual. In the past, Enroe must have stood in front of them is it to establish the authority of the heir. Ariel thought silently, waiting for the Baron to speak. When the last family member walked in, Chloe whispered in the Baron's ear, "Father, everyone is here." The Baron opened his eyes, counted the number of people, and said in a deep voice, "This autumn is coming to an end soon, and while wild animals such as rabbits, pheasants, and reindeer are still active, a hunt is being held. In this hunting, all the knights in the territory will be present. Although deadly beasts will be driven deep into the forest, there is a certain level of danger." The Baron stood up and glanced at the 4 sons below the hall. His gaze quickly passed and eventually turned to Ariel. "Ariel, your strength is weak. Are you staying in the castle for training, or are you?" "Father, I want to be with my brother and the others," Ariel said immediately, worried about not having the chance to leave the castle. The Baron gave Ariel a faint glance and said, "Try to stay in a safe area when the time comes." Yes, Ariel agreed on the surface, but in fact, he had already decided to run into the depths of the forest alone to collect medicine. Deep Red comes with a scanning function, which can detect dangerous animals from hundreds of meters away. He is not worried about the danger. Because Ariel showed good talent, the Baron showed a little more concern for this son, but only for that. The Baron continued, "Chloe will also participate in this hunt, and the best son will receive a special reward." After speaking, the Baron took out a bottle of emerald green potion from his arms. He just twisted the bottle cap a little, and a strong medicinal fragrance drifted to various parts of the hall. Ariel felt that after inhaling the fragrance of the medicine, his tired body suddenly became energized, and he knew the extraordinary nature of the medicine. "Deep Red, test that bottle of medicine." Drip. The medicinal fragrance has been detected to have a slight effect on enhancing physical fitness and relieving fatigue. According to ingredient analysis, there is a 73% chance that the potion is the knight's song, and drinking it can significantly increase the probability of becoming an advanced knight. The analysis of Deep Red immediately enters the brain. When Ariel saw that the potion was most likely the knight's song, he immediately looked at Chloe. Without a doubt, this reward must be given to him. "Baron, is this?" the knight couldn't help but ask. "The Song of Knights." The Baron's tone was calm, as if he didn't take the potion in his hand seriously. But when the Baron uttered the knight's song, the people below the hall couldn't help but gasp for breath. It is rumored that after drinking the knight's song, ordinary people can also possess the power of knights. And this small bottle, placed in the market, starts at least 100 gold coins and has a price but no market. How did Lord Baron get it? Many knights suddenly realized something, calmed down, and turned their gaze to Chloe above. They suddenly understood the purpose of this hunt. The Baron was paving the way for young Master Chloe. The knight's song is for him to break through the night. Just as everyone was overthinking, the Baron said, and the second place in this hunt will receive an additional secret medicine this month. At this moment, Matthew and the others were boiling with excitement, and that was their true reward. Matthew glanced warily at Oliver and his second brother Alan, and suddenly remembered Ariel, who had amazing archery skills. A thought suddenly came to his mind watching the excited expressions of his sons. The Baron laughed. Suddenly, he noticed Ariel, who was as calm as water, and his smile froze. Okay, Ariel can't possibly get this reward. The Baron thought of this and understood, his face wearing a smile again. After a while, everyone's emotions calmed down, and the Baron also decided to end the discussion. The hunt will take place 3 days later in the Emerald Forest near the castle. After you go back, prepare well and go down. As the Baron and Chloe left, Ariel silently turned around and left, secretly planning to use the powerful analytical ability of Crimson to collect medicinal herbs. He doesn't intend to step forward and compete for that portion of the secret medicine. It's better to collect the medicine with this skill and refine it himself. Zhaozuiyuan.com. On the way to the training ground, a familiar voice came from behind Ariel. Ariel. Matthew walked briskly from behind. Brother Wu, what can I do for you? Ariel politely replied. Do you dare to gamble on this hunt? Matthew said seriously. I dare not. Ariel's words made Matthew feel like his heavy punch was hitting cotton, with no effect. This feeling is like a fish bone stuck in the throat, very uncomfortable. Matthew doesn't intend to easily let Ariel go. Apart from gambling, he also proves himself to Lord Henry and father. Ariel, are you planning to keep avoiding like a coward? It's a man, just take a gamble. Just bet on the ranking of the hunt. I won, you loudly call yourself a waste in front of everyone on the training ground. I lost, and I'll give you the secret medicine for this month. Matthew gritted his teeth, as if he had made up his mind. Ariel looked back at Matthew and shook his head. Under fair competition, he doesn't like to take advantage of others, and he doesn't take this hunting trip seriously. Matthew mistakenly thought Ariel was afraid and muttered loudly. Ariel, you wouldn't even agree to such a bet, can you be considered a man? Brother Wu, you should calm down and compete for the secret medicine for rewards, instead of being overwhelmed by emotions, Ariel kindly reminded. Upon hearing the reward, Matthew paused for a moment, then snorted coldly, the bet is just a lottery, the bet is still valid. I won't lose, nor can I lose. Ariel stopped and turned to look at Matthew, who was holding his wooden sword tightly and looking confident.